They're like, oh my God, you're from America. Ooh. So there is a shininess. There is a privilege to having that. Well, really, how miscommunication creates so many problems and costs so much.
Doesn't matter what
It doesn't matter, but I am curious.
Doesn't matter. My political orientation is I'm more what works for the majority of the population.
Yeah.
Can you break that, the structure of one-to-many versus one-to-one communication or conversations or a dialogue?
Another frame I use is like breadth versus depth. So if you're doing a broadcast message one-to-many, you can usually only tackle a message in a very shallow way. This is where we hear the sound bites that come out of politics. Don't know, vote no. That's the most recent one from the referendum.
If you have some ideas, how do you manage and deal difficult conversations where you have an emotional relationship with the other person?
You're right, emotions come up. You can't control the other person and their response. So I'm going to come from generosity, I'm going to come from love. How do I hold this human being while they're having that emotion? You have to communicate it well so that people feel a sense of security through that change, but I think they would feel more excited and involved in the process. Humans are messy.
Yeah, so humans have
AI
ups and
is
downs.
not.
So AI campaign is always positive, always available, any point in time, and same as humans can't be.
There is more challenge when you're interacting with humans because we're messy, we're fallible, there is friction, but it is also a more rewarding type of connection that you get rather than the connection you get with an AI bot.
If majority of your audience is people with disabilities, what happens in their lives, it's more authentic to that organization, but that should be the first focus, that people should be able to understand the complexity of visible disabilities and invisible disabilities.
All right. Everyone will be disabled at some point in their life. Disability is a universal issue. I was addressing privilege from a very tokenistic, tick-boxy perspective almost of this ism, that ism, tick, 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 whereas you've come from such a viewing privilege from a human experience of having love and foundation and security.
Before we get started, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode of our cutting-edge contemporary conversations. Thank you. Welcome, Emma, today. It's good to sit with a fellow who is working within the campaign space and in policy and in communication space, and have multiple geographical understanding of how communication happens across different continents. Would love to, and I'm very interested in your thoughts and views on many things. But before I delve into that side, I would like you to talk a bit about yourself, what you've been up to, and what you like and dislike.
All right, many questions in one. And yeah, we have a shared love of people. I can already tell that straight away. So this should be very fun as we dive into society and humans and how we interact with each other. Well, about me. So I was born. And no, I'm just kidding. I won't start all the way back there. I usually introduce myself by saying I come from cold, dark places. Alaska and Minnesota is where I grew up. So I've been moving warmer my whole life and very grateful to have landed here in Borlu, on Noongar Budja in Perth, Western Australia. So very, very grateful that life has landed me here on what I fondly call the arse end of the world, because it really is so far from everywhere else. My career, my craft is in conversations. That's the skill I've been honing over my lifetime, really. It started professionally back in 2008 when I was working to elect Barack Obama in northern Minnesota. That was a really special election, and I was a wee 17-year-old, very idealistic, optimistic. How can we change the world? And of course, we were electing Barack Obama, a very amazing candidate, but kind of a courageous choice at that point, being the first Black president. And then in Minnesota, we were also electing as Senator Al Franken, who was a comedian on Saturday Night Live. So I'm calling into conservative northern Minnesota, trying to elect a Black man and a comedian. Like, those were some tough conversations. So that was sort of my first start in campaigning. And campaigning took me across the states and really around the world, because that's what brought me to Western Australia, to first elect Mark McGowan, but then to run the marriage equality campaign in Western Australia later that year in 2017. And that was an extraordinary campaign, the marriage equality campaign. It was sort of the pinnacle of my campaigning career. I hung up my hat after that. I'm like, this is done. We're beautiful, amazing. And it was I think the reason why I loved the marriage equality campaign specifically was because it was so community driven, and it was a very simple issue. Often when you're running a candidate campaign, there's all these different issues you have to manage. There's healthcare conversations, education, transport, employment, whereas with marriage equality, it got very specific. It was very narrow, and that allowed us to go deep and to have a really meaningful conversation across our community. Since then, I dabbled in a bunch of different projects. I was a manager for a virtual human rights museum, worked in the COVID communications team at Department of Premier and Cabinet to launch the vaccine campaign, worked on some infrastructure projects like Westport and Metronet. And for the last 5 years, I've actually been working with my friend Rhys Paddock, who's an Aboriginal man, on helping people give authentic acknowledgements of country. So I'm the white fella in that conversation, as you can tell, modeling how we can do it, how we can all speak to the connection to country and to the traditional culture of this place. And then earlier this year, I decided to expand my curiosity and step away from Acknowledge This. So Rhys is still doing that great work, but I've sort of branched out on my own. And now my work is just about conversations, which is the common thread through everything I have done. Having conversations with our community, having conversations with your neighbors, having really intense conversations about race and culture and privilege, having conversations about rights and justice. So I'm all about conversations now, both in a organizational context, in the conversations that people are having at work, and how communications, well, really how miscommunication creates so many problems and costs so much. But then also personally, how there's a real endemic of loneliness right now. You know, people feel really disconnected to each other. Even though we might share space, we aren't really connecting. And conversations is a real key to solving that problem in our personal lives. So kind of tackling conversations on two fronts now.
Wow.
Is that enough?
That's a good introduction, and thank you for covering all the facets of your life in terms of your understanding across campaigns and communication. Can I... Before the 08 campaign of Barack Obama, can you talk a bit more the intention of running campaigns, the idea that this young girl, I want to be different, where I'm born in a more conservative country or the conservative land or the state, how that thought of running communication and then choosing a side. So you chose a side. How has that evolved in your life?
Great question. Well, I mean, personally, I've always been a talker, and I love talking to strangers. So getting into campaigns was a very natural fit for me to channel my optimism and positivity. So that was I sort of fell into it. My friend Emily asked me to go door knocking one day when I was, again, 17. So I didn't intend to go into it. It just sort of happened. How it has changed over time is... I mean, choosing a side initially, I grew up in a very progressive household. My mom is a painter. My dad's a musician. They ended up getting divorced. That's too many creatives for one household. But my mom's side particularly my grandparents were old hippies. You know, they protested the Vietnam War. They were very pro-human rights. I was even thinking recently, my siblings and I were talking about how for Christmas, we'd always get the gift of a UNICEF goat. Like you've sponsored a goat for a community in, South America or something. And we'd be like, all right, Grandma, that's great, but also, can I have a gift or something? So no, it really instilled in me a sense of generosity and giving back. But yeah, so progressives have always been the issues that I work for and work towards. Even when I was working internationally, I did get approached by some campaigns where I had different moral values, and I decided not to work for them. So I'm not a mercenary, right? I'm not a hired gun. I do choose generally progressive issues and what I believe to be progressive. But my connection to progressivism has changed over time because progressivism has changed, right? I think the progressive culture, the progressive community has become quite polarizing themselves. There's a lot of frustrations I have within how progressive movements are run. They say one thing, we're all about inclusion and equality, but then they act really, really horribly to each other. Or there isn't
They're exclusionary.
Yeah, and or just catty and gossip and all those things. Like, why don't we come from a place of love? Why are we still coming from a place of scarcity and fear, even within this so-called better place? That's not quite well explained, but I think, so I became a bit jaded, I suppose, with politics. And even now, I think the two sides are so extreme that, well, and oh gosh, how deep do you want to go, right? Because this is
very interesting.
Well, yeah, and I've realized you're academic, so we can go here.
Yeah.
The problem with the two-party system is that it naturally pits two people against each other, Democrats, Republicans, Labor, Liberal, and they're naturally supposed to attack each other to the bottom, right? It actually tears apart the two parties and the system that we're within if it's a two-party system, because they're always at attacking each other. And so it's a race to the bottom in that system. So I find that like two-party systems have created this outcome where it's extreme division, extreme polarization, no one's in the center, or people wish there was a party in the center, but it just doesn't happen in the structure. Anyway, I kind of went on a ramble there, but
yeah. So from there on, in terms of not just picking a side that you are on the more progressive side of politics, that's where you want to stay. But in terms of the practicality of running a campaign machine, running a machine which will communicate and deliver, the tools are the same. Wherever you sit, the technique and the technology, the structure, the engineering of messaging and delivery and crafting is essentially the same. But how you deliver and the message might change, but the technology underneath lying probably stay the same. So how do you see that working? Well,
it's like they both have, but all parties have the same tools, but they use them differently. Is one initial comment. The conservative movements generally have better, at least in the States, they've been running, the Republicans have been running research on values that resonate with Americans since like, 1960s, right? For a really, really long time. So they've done more research, if you will, to inform their messaging. It's very, very sticky, the messaging that comes out of the conservative side. Also on the conservative side, there's more discipline, right? They decide as a party what they're going to do, and they all support it. Like when they all backed in Trump in 2016, I think some people were shocked, but I mean, there's extreme discipline, which is really powerful. Sometimes on the progressive side, you see a scattering where people are like, no, that carbon emissions strategy doesn't go far enough. And then other people are like, it's fine, man, we have to take one step towards that. And so the progressives don't have as much discipline. So the message is a lot more fractured. But yeah, they have the similar tools. I don't know. I have a bias, right?
Yeah,
in campaigns.
that's fine. Everybody has a bias.
Everyone has a bias.
People come with bias. Nobody's neutral.
Yeah. And can I ask, what's your political orientation as well, so I can frame things? I'm playing a very balanced.
Doesn't matter what.
It doesn't matter, but I am curious.
Doesn't matter. My political orientation is I'm more what works for the majority of the population. Yeah. Because the political pendulum swings, and I think what works for the Middle Australia should happen. That's my political affiliation, wherever it sits.
Yeah, cool. Same. And I'm a centrist now as well. And luckily in Australia, both of the major parties, Labor, Liberal, they overlap mostly. Health, jobs, education, transport, they agree. It's just how they pay for it, whether it's privatized or publicly funded. So luckily we live in a very centrist country. My bias when it comes to creating change is conversations and leveraging the power of people. So sometimes campaigns are won with digital campaigns and memes. I would much rather favor going and having chats in our community. And I'm seeing actually, I think, a rise in people wanting to meet belly to belly, having a chat neighbor to neighbor. So I advocate for the tactics, which are phone calling, door knocking, community events, community halls, bringing people together, making them feel excited and connected to something larger than themselves that they then want to go and tell their neighbors and friends about. So that's my primary tactic, the one I like the most.
And the form of conversations, whether it's one-to-many or one-to-one, when are we having these, whether it's a political campaign, whether it's a change happening within an organization, whether it's from the Department of Health when you were talking about the campaign on COVID. There are two different one-to-many structure is very different. So if you want to, can you break that, the structure of one-to-many versus one-to-one communication or conversations or a dialogue?
Yeah. Another frame I use is like breadth versus depth. So if you're doing a broadcast message, one to many, you can usually only tackle a message in a very shallow way. This is where we hear the sound bites that come out of politics. What's the classic one in Australia? Like turn the boats back or whatever that one was. I'm trying to think, what was don't know, vote no. That's the most recent one from the referendum that the Liberals were using. So if you do a very catchy message, you can distribute it in a broadcast sense. It's a very shallow message, but it has a lot of penetration because it's really sticky. But it doesn't really mean much. It doesn't say much. You have to dig deeper into the policy that sits behind it. The depth conversations is where actual change happens, in my opinion. That's where you actually get to shift someone's behavior, perception, or belief. And that's why it's the most powerful, but it takes more time to have one-on-one conversations with people. A one-on-one conversation allows us to connect and explore, what do you think, what do I think, hey, what do we have in common? A one-on-one conversation is really about having the curiosity to find out what we have in common, and then leveraging that into action, into a change in behavior, a change in their vote, into something else. So it's by finding connection in that one-on-one conversation and then turning it into something.
And as I think changes, as you said, behavior changes, people start thinking differently when you have more one-to-ones or more meaningful, the deeper conversation than the broader conversation. But in our observation of probably last 10, 15, 20 odd campaigns of all ways and means and all sides of political spectrum, they are limited to the catch lines, which is just the one over dumped, which assumes no agency for the majority of the population, which assumes probably if nobody's leaning towards having long form conversations to give and explain my argument, it'll take time. So super minimizing the whole idea of a longer conversation into a small crunchy line, probably it assumes or presumes at some level no agency from the majority of people who are receiving that message.
Totally agree. And like, this is a very American style of campaigning, the sizzle, no sausage. I remember when I first came to Australia and I had to do costings, because people are like, wait, but how are you going to pay for the bridge? And I'm like, I've never had a voter on a door ever ask me about the detail. So I want to say that it's very unique in Australia because you have compulsory voting, which is, I think, one of 13 countries around the world that does compulsory voting, but the largest country. And so when you have compulsory voting, your electorate is much more engaged because they have to vote, so they are more likely to research things. But I would say that is not having people engaged in political discussion is not the norm. Globally, but also here in Australia. So I think the preference for the soundbite is actually driven by people's lack of interest, lack of time. They don't care to have the conversation. They don't have the time to do their research. So the soundbite helps them feel that they understand what's happening without actually doing much of the work that sits behind it. So it's sort of there's not apathy, but there is, I think, less education and engagement in politics now than there ever has been. I don't know. What are you seeing? Obviously, you're an academic, right? And you're in very engaged spaces. So, and as am I, right? So my friends and I will talk politics, but I think we're in the minority. What do you think?
You're right. Many people who are constantly tracking what's happening in the political sphere. Very few people who will watch live streams of the parliament.
Press release, like insiders, like.
So that's a minority, but again, people have interests. But during the election campaigns, I think there's enough time to distill the long form message versus the short form quick bites. That's what I think probably across the 3 years of no elections, people they can tune out because they have normal lives. People have to go to work, have kids and family, and there's so many things to do. Not everybody wants to be tuned into politics all the time. It's just the last 6 weeks of campaigns.
Yeah.
Probably people can join in and be given the opportunity for the longer form messaging rather than the short form messaging.
And you're right. It does. There's growing distrust in our institutions, as we know. People don't trust politics. They don't trust, the government. And you're right. Delivering these trite messages almost paternalizes people, or they're kind of like, "Don't treat me like a child. Give me the actual data. Give me something meaty." I hadn't quite connected those, but I think you're right. It makes the population feel dismissed or disempowered, perhaps, in their own participation or their own voice in the process.
And also, we probably in Australia we don't have too many public debates for leading up to candidates from the same party. They're going on each other, from people from the same party, the way you have in the US.
Yeah.
That people on the same party go on each other.
Yeah, the open primary.
And then you do, the other side happen, the full on.
And just to explain that, so like in Australia, the political parties, they have those debates behind closed doors, and then they come out with a unified front.
Yeah.
Whereas in the US, you'll have an open primary with multiple Democrats running against each other, having the discussion in public, which is quite rigorous. It has its pros and cons.
Yeah. And it's good to see that who stands where on the whole spectrum, on the left and on the right side of the politics. But coming to when you craft a message, when you want to communicate with an audience, beyond the intent, how do you start that project, for example? So how do you start crafting a message? How do you start creating that campaign? So what are the bare minimum bones you start working with? Then you add fat, and then you add the whole body, then you become the whole campaign. But how do you start working at the core?
Yeah, I mean, generally, I guess you could say it starts from two directions. One, lots of research. So lots of polling goes out, seeing what people care about, seeing what the electorate is thinking and feeling, what are voters saying, doing focus groups. So lots of research informs where people are at and what they want. But equally, it's what do you as the politician or the party advocate for? What do you value and what do you want to create? What's the change you want to create in the world? And you sort of massage those two to come up with some core values or some things that resonate. And then from there, it's a bit of trial and error. You're testing the message, you're putting it out there, you're A/B testing, again, your focus group testing, until you land on the message that does get the stickiness, and then that becomes a primary core message that you run with for the rest of the campaign. One thing on messaging is that, there's sort of an adage that you'll be saying your key message again and again and again and again, and you're so sick of saying it. You're blue in the face. I'm so bored of this. Only then are the voters starting to hear it. So you have to almost say it's a disgusting amount of times for it to finally resonate. I think it used to be 6 touches, 6 times of hearing the message before a voter could recall it. Now it's about 12 due to the attention span decline. So someone has to see your core message 12 times for them to remember the message and attach it to you. So there's a reason for a trite message being delivered again and again and again, because that's what actually creates penetration.
And then, as you said, that the core of what you have done across your career is conversations. And then we have many conversations across the day, across our life, but the most probably remembered are the difficult ones, and you can remember the difficult conversations, and how not everybody's trained to run and have a difficult chat. How do you prepare yourself? How do you think about it? And how do you work on it so that it doesn't becomes a traumatic experience for you to remember all the time and then makes you emotive all the time? So how do you start and then take on a difficult conversation?
Oh man, how much time do you have? It's a huge one, and I have a lot of empathy. I've had lots of practice having these kinds of conversations. I can appreciate that they're often laden with anxiety, stress, overwhelm. It takes a lot of courage to go and have a difficult conversation. And I define courage as having fear and taking a step anyway. So you have these fears. What's going to go wrong? And this is the other thing about conversations is it's an organic thing. You can't plan it. You don't know what's going to happen. I often use the metaphor of fire to describe how a conversation is structured. And I'll briefly explain it maybe because the thing you can do to help with a difficult conversation is to prepare, right? To wrap your head around it. Think about particularly how you're going to open the framing of the conversation, because how you start it determines how the rest of it's going to flow. You can think about what questions to ask, what's the desired outcome, how are you going to, what possible responses they might give so you can adapt. So there's lots of ways you can prepare for those difficult conversations to give you a bit more strength and confidence going into it. But ultimately, you have to learn that through practice, through having those difficult conversations and learning how to navigate the complexity. I think something that I'm seeing a lot of is that people aren't being honest, even when it's hard. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I want to write a giant permission slip for people saying, even if you don't know, that's okay, just say it. Right? So you might be like, let's take a workplace example. So you might say like, hey boss, I've gotten another job, but I really want to make sure that we do the transition well so that you're not caught in a lurch and that I'm not leaving my post unattended. So how do you want to manage this transition process? And an opening frame like that says, I don't know what the answer is. Let's build it together. I want to make sure that you're good and that I'm good. You know, like you've set up a frame which has it's a container for you to explore it together, but it's the two of you on the same side of the problem. And I don't know, that's a whole smattering of different approaches you could use for difficult conversations, but some preparation and particularly creating the opening frame is the most important part. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And at a personal level, when you are dealing with personal challenges and issues, and which become more emotive because there's a cost of having a chat with somebody, your loved one or somebody who's close to you or a good friend, and they become emotive. So I think how much ever framing probably people might try, things might go down south. So they're always things might go south because not everybody can deliver those hard messages or in succinct, clear, while understanding what the other person is feeling and having that empathy towards the other person who you are delivering those messaging. And those difficult conversations probably, if you have some ideas, how do you manage and deal difficult conversations where you have an emotional relationship with the other person?
So if the structure is what to do, the how to be in the conversation, because you're right, emotions come up. You can't control the other person and their response. So in that case, it's less about what you're doing and more about how you're being, what energy you're bringing into that conversation. And the model I use is I tell people to glow, to bring generosity, love, openness, and wonder. So if someone is having an emotional reaction, how can you generously assume positive intent, give them the benefit of the doubt? How can you respond with love instead of judgment or defensiveness? Being open to what they're saying rather than, again, closing down and being like, well, but what I said is what I think. Like be open to what they're saying and be receptive to it. And then wonder is that sense of curiosity about it, like in asking questions, really. If someone's having an emotion, asking them questions like, tell me more. How did that make you feel? Where do you feel it in your body right now? Some of those questions help them process it, because really what you're doing is you're holding space for them to do their own reflection. And what a generous thing you can do to help someone walk through the emotion they're having and to hold that space for them with love and generosity. So I think it's less about, we could talk about what to do and what some of the tactics could be, but I think it's more important how you be. Are you responding to their emotion by defending yourself and putting them over there and, I can't handle this right now. Or maybe even it's triggering, that's triggering an emotional reaction within yourself. How can you instead just be like, all right, I'm going to come from generosity, I'm going to come from love. How do I hold this human being while they're having that emotion? And almost not putting yourself to the side, because I do think we still have to advocate for ourselves and our boundaries in those situations, but certainly being compassionate in that moment. I don't know. Does that resonate? You think, or is it?
No, I think yeah. I can get where you're coming from, and there are people who are in the professions of being counselors, and they are or psychologists who are interacting with people who walk into the door with so much baggage or either negative or positive conversations, but they have a big problem to solve in front of them, and they are trying to open up with a stranger. Or probably unknown stranger that I've met you for 3 or 4 sessions before this, but still having that counseling conversation also because people are seeking out more mental health support these days. It's become more open. People are, and those conversations are also critical, not just probably to give what's inside me out, put it on the table, but also to get something back. Not just it's not a session for me to tell you everything, but it's a session for me to get to somebody to get more something back, tools and then structures, which can walk back this person who's seeking counseling or support can walk out from that conversation empowered and then strong.
Yeah. Esther Perel, couples therapist, now turned global awesomeness.
Yes.
I love her so much.
Yeah.
She's describing that when people, and this is common in therapy land, but when people are going through trauma, the thing that helps them is having an empathetic witness, having someone just to witness them, to hold them in empathy. And sometimes the people who are closest to us can't do that because they're part of the situation. So having a therapist be that empathetic witness is absolutely a gift that people get. The other thing I would say, the reason why having a third party or an external person, and you could even do this with journaling as well, but getting it out, is it helps you figure out what do you want. Because a lot of people start a difficult conversation and they're like, I don't know, this just isn't working for me. Okay, well, what do you want instead? I don't know. We feel something. We feel discomfort. We feel boredom. We feel stuck. But we don't know actually what we want instead. We just know that what we're feeling right now doesn't feel good. Figuring out what you want is the hardest thing, but is also very important before you start those conversations. Because when you know what you want, then you can design towards that. You can recruit the person to help you make that happen. But if you don't know what you want, you don't have a destination.
In this fast-changing evolution happening from a corporate point of view as well, a lot of change is coming towards employees on a regular basis. And now with the new tech of AI and then coming into play, things are moving much faster, which means the evolution of skill set, the way I communicate or you communicate with your colleagues will also keep on changing. You have to keep up to the pace of what's coming and what's changing, with the fear also at the back end that what might happen. And when you implement large change projects within an organization, that we used to do things like this now we will do the things like a different way. This is a new way of doing things, and taking people on that journey. The leaders have to communicate clearly the why we are transitioning from here to there. There's a new way of operating and doing things. How do you see those situations? Because they are more often happening almost every year within large, small, and mid-sized kind of an organization settings. How leaders should understand the story of or to communicate in these situations when people might get fatigued because it's happening so often.
Yeah, you've named it beautifully, and I'm very grateful that you named the why. I think that's the part that gets missed a lot. A lot of our systems are still very command and control, hierarchical. Just do what I say, or here's a new policy, and they think that will change it, and it doesn't. Explaining the why gets people's buy-in, so that's already a great start. Overwhelmingly, our systems are very hierarchical. They're very driven by linear change. We do step 1, then we do step 2, then we do step 3. And this feels very comfortable. It gives people a lot of security, right? So firstly, if you're doing any change program, have the plan, right? Because if you say, hey, we're going to change things, but we don't know how, so just kind of sit in business as usual until we tell you how, you've created this vacuum, right? Where people are going to gossip and they're uncertain what's going to happen, how they're going to be impacted. So if you are going to go about change, have the plan and announce that as part of the change process. I wish that, so we're looking at a lot of system change, right? We're looking at how our structures need to change. I mean, AI and augmentation of AI in the workforce is going to bring dramatic change. So I wish I could wave a magic wand and change all of our systems from these linear and hierarchical models into circular models. Because, for example, if you say you're going through a change program, if you do step 1, step 2, step 3, by the time you've started step 1, maybe moved on to step 2, the goal has changed, the context has changed, everything has changed, so the plan needs to change. Whereas instead, if we designed our change programs to be, here's the destination, we're going to run a little experiment first. Boop, we're going to do one cycle. Then we're going to get your feedback. Boop, then we're going to do a second cycle. There's a style of strategy which is very iterative, where you design something, put it out there, test it, review what worked, and then build on the positive energy. And you still achieve the outcome, but it's more of a building with them and with momentum, rather than saying, here's the 5-year plan and we're going to execute it, and by year 2 it will be obsolete. So I wish that we could look at the way we go about change strategy in a more loose and flowing sense, which again, I don't know. You'd have to communicate it well so that people feel a sense of security through that change. But I think they would feel more excited and involved in the process. And that would alleviate some of the concerns and fears.
And at some level, because some roles are more prone to risk of fear, which are more frontline or junior or internship roles, because many things AI and AI agents are probably doing a good amount of that. So I think the messaging of saying that why we should change have to be more stronger, because it's changing and it's changing faster with a strong fear.
Well, the challenge with this kind of fear, so the antidote to fear is love, right? Ultimately, that's the ultimate frame that we all live within. But in a workplace context, when it comes to your job security, the antidote to fear is trust. And so how do you actually create trust with people within your team or within the hierarchy, within the big boss at the top? If people feel trust that you are going to take care of them, that alleviates the fear. So I wonder if instead of addressing the rapid change through more and more strategies and plans, what if we just invested in building connection and building trust, so that when the changes happen, we know, okay, well, my boss is going to look out for me, or hey, I got my team and we're going to look out for each other. If we actually have that connection, the strength of that network, that's a way to be more resilient to these ongoing changes. But you're right. I think AI is going to dramatically change all of our structures. It's the worst it's ever going to be right now, right? AI is only going to get better. It's going to get more ingrained in our systems. It's going to be a significant colleague of ours and a life, partner in some ways. AI is touching us in all these different ways, and people are afraid of change.
It's a hybrid workforce. You'll have colleagues and then human colleagues and AI colleagues working parallel together in organizations. So the hybridization of the workforce will start trusting, and probably that's another challenge with that kind of a workforce.
Well, and I hope that what happens is that the AI takes some of the workload off of the humans, because I don't know about you, but everyone I talk to is overworked. They're working at 120% capacity. There's more demands on them than ever. If AI could take off some of that, so people are working at 80% capacity, then they have space to breathe, they have space to innovate. So I really hope it's an augmentation of the workforce, so that the humans have more space to do their own work and their own lives and the creative thinking that comes with spaciousness.
The most intimate form of conversation is one-to-one, and when you're sharing your fears and then what you like and what dislike one-to-one. I'm going on the same line as AI, on the AI. There are tools and people are using AI companions. And that's a rabbit hole which I went to in terms of I never used it, but I was watching documentaries on AI companions. And what's happening, because it's always, you are sharing information, and if somebody who remembers everything, a companion, or your likes and dislikes, almost all information is still used to respond to any further response. It's always complimenting, positive, upbeat, happy. There's a negative moment, which is non-human.
Humans are messy.
So humans have
AI
ups and
is
downs.
not.
so AI companions always positive, always available, any point in time, and same as humans can't be. And you would see people who are using at a younger age when they probably can't differentiate between this is human has to have experience of relationships which are up and down, whereas with the AI companions they are not. It's always accepting and then positive, and people might go into different rabbit hole, and then they become socially isolated from other humans. And at some one level, it's highly intimate. Companion knows everything about you, but at some level, it's also isolating.
Totally, yeah. You can tell it anything, your deepest, darkest secrets, and even like different than a therapist, you know it isn't going anywhere because it's password protected, if you will. But yeah, it does have this issue where it is sycophantic, it's very affirming, and it's frictionless. You know, it's smooth. There's never any pushback from AI, even if it is giving you feedback on like, oh, you could have done that better. It's saying it frames it in such a positive way. So it kind of distorts what we expect our human interactions to be like. And then I totally agree as well that it's creating this isolation of people. And like isolation's been happening for a long time with digital echo chambers, the loss of third spaces, you know, like we are at home, we are at work, and then we would go to church or have a community center. The third space has definitely been declining. And even the second space is now because people are remote working from home and flex working. So we are becoming more and more isolated, and AI will certainly contribute to that. But I'm also seeing a reaction almost as a response to that, where people are craving to meet in person, meet belly to belly, because there is something that is intangible. There's energy, you know. There's an element of
coming together.
Yeah, that is uniquely human, and it's innately human. You know, across continents and cultures, we've always gathered together as humans. That's how we've met every adversity, celebrated every success. And it's funny, even talking about those difficult conversations, you know, once you have that difficult conversation, and maybe it's a couple of conversations before you reach resolution, but gosh, the feeling you have when you've resolved it and like you're more solid because you've patched the cracks, or you've explored that, or you've talked about something that you want different in your life, and now you're living into that lifestyle. It's so rewarding. And so there is more challenge when you're interacting with humans because we're messy, we're fallible, there is friction, but it is also a more rewarding type of connection that you get rather than the connection you get with an AI bot.
From a point of view of, because most of the AI tools who are either bots or AI tools, large language models, they come with the bias as well. So they have their own political orientation as well as what can they and they can't say. So there are good guardrails around them. Or good or bad, one could define, you know, wherever they sit, they can define the guardrails. They are good or bad. Because it's very privately, as an organization, they have done their guardrails, defined the boundaries by their own way, which is not managed and structured through a government conversation or conversation from a point of view of it should do more good than bad. Rather than it should not be focusing only on, okay, this is a tool, I want to create as much capital as I can to the use and maximize the output and productivity, and then push. But to see, also take a pause and see, let's define it in such a fashion that it will do more good than bad.
It is though, but like every moral framework has a point of view. I mean, the closest we can come to a universal moral framework is the Universal Human Rights Declaration, right? That is truly universal. But even then, some people disagree with it and it doesn't match their moral framework. So so giving AI a frame of what is good and what is bad, who is that defined by? By what measures? And especially if it's an adaptive AI, like we're seeing more and more generative AI, will the AI start to determine what it perceives as good or bad? Because like if you look at humans, we're messy, we're fallible, we're flesh bags that are very fragile in a lot of ways. Like maybe AI decides that we are not good, you know? Like so as it gets its own consciousness, I'm very curious to see how that will evolve. That got really dark. Sorry,
That's fine.
That's the science fiction nerd in me taking it to the nth degree.
That's fair enough. I think I didn't have a follow-up question on that one, but when leaders want to deliver or individuals who are running advocacy campaigns, then they might not be politicians, but they are advocating for an issue which has come out of grassroots, an issue focused on specific communities. And the only way to gather people, and probably I feel or bring people together, is to communicate through authentic language, authentic stories, and authentic delivery. So one might have an authentic message, you might also have an authentic story, but not have an authentic delivery, because that's practiced. That's the theater of it.
It's polished.
Yeah, so that's polishing of it. But the first two is natural. All humans will have authentic stories and authentic messages. But the delivery varies. And if the delivery is different from person to person, how far that advocacy campaign goes reflects on the delivery part of it.
Yeah.
And because those tools should be given to public policy advocates in their own regions, people who are working at the grassroots.
Yeah, I'm a big etymology nerd. I love words. Authentic, the definition of authentic means not a copy, of unique origin. So it's ironic when someone's giving a stump speech, and it might be an authentic story, but it's repeated exactly the same with the same pause at the same moment for the same laugh break. Like it doesn't feel authentic because it is a copy. We even see this in our systems, like reconciliation action plans is a classic. Everyone says, I want an authentic reconciliation plan, but they literally download a template from Reconciliation Australia and they copy it. Like it is a copy. And so when you're looking at that lens, how do you make it of unique origin, of unique self? And one of the ways I combat that is like when you are telling stories, when you're talking about key messages, is authentically acknowledging where you are at, you know, where you're at today. Like, for example, I'm talking a lot about my IP and things that I believe, and some of these are key messages I've delivered on other podcasts or in my books or my blogs. But today I'm feeling a bit scatty, so they're kind of coming out in their own jumbled way, or maybe not as polished as I wish they were, but that's just authentically where I'm at today. I think I've probably had a little too much caffeine, perhaps. And so I think that's one way to combat the tokenism or making it feel so inauthentic is by being real, and being real with wherever you're at and not feeling you need to perform or mask, just delivering it as you are. But
the theatrics or the delivery, you might be authentic, but the intention from a point of view in advocacy campaigns is you have to bring the audience together, because it'll fall flat on its face if it's not delivered well. If it doesn't come together, the community will lose on something positive, and the negative might come up. So
okay, I see what you mean. So
I was we want to empower people who are community advocates, who are picking up issues which matter their communities, and they're not doing with an malintention to be the politician of the future, but with an intention to do good for their community because they were born there, they're from the community, from that part of the state or the country. So those people, I think, needs these tools or understanding of the delivery part of it.
I mean, I jump straight to like practicality, and if you come in with good intention and good heart, you can't go wrong, right? The thing I see most commonly in grassroots campaigns is actually a lack of message clarity. It's a lot of waffling or a story that goes on for 12 minutes that no one really knows what's the point of this. So if you go in with message clarity, with a bit of structure around what you're going to talk about and what's the outcome you want to create, what's the call to action, if you have even that outline, a loose structure, then go in with good heart, good authenticity, and explain it. That'll get it across the line, because people can read your intentions. My friend Reese, he says, language is just words, is just noises we make with our mouth, right? Like language doesn't have any meaning beyond what we ascribe to it. And so even if I were to go up and I'm talking about anything, you know what my intent is. You can read my heart. So as long as you have good heart and you're in service to your cause, that gets you most of the way there. But then also don't waffle on too long because everybody's bored. So in balance.
Yeah, perfect.
I love how you chuckle. You do these things where just the corner of your mouth starts to go and then you actually laugh.
Yes, I try to laugh ever appropriate.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh gosh, was that funny? I don't know.
No, I think it's good when we talk about people who are managing teams which are critical. You are leading a team of defense personnel, and then it's more very critical.
It's very serious roles.
It's very serious.
Yeah.
So you can't be.
You need command and control in that environment.
Yeah, you can't waffle on. It is just quick. This is the message, and this is how you deliver it. And then same as from issues of matter of national interest. And when you speak on those topics, whether it's an individual or a politician or the public servant, it has to be delivered in a specific fashion. So it creates a specific level of seriousness to be delivered. And how do you see those communication or conversations to be had at Mass?
I mean, I'm chuckling because we ran a workshop with the National Intelligence Agency in Canberra, and we had to check our phone in at the front. We couldn't use our own laptop, etc. And let me tell you, that audience, we were delivering our workshop, and they were like. They were in. I've never had such an attentive audience. It was kind of interesting because usually you have someone kind of scrolling or people are kind of here and there, but no, they were in. So I'm very grateful that those are the people looking after our national interests. And yeah, it is a very different communication style. I think there is a time for all kinds of communication, right? So co-designing, collaboration, that's a great model for a lot of the time to tackle a lot of problems. But sometimes you only need coordination, just telling people what to do and when to do it. And sometimes you just need a real commanding style where there is no room for discussion. It's just telling you what happens. We saw that with the COVID vaccine incident, right? No one's saying, hey, community, how should we design our safety protocols and our border protections? It's coming from the health minister and the premier and advice from the Surgeon General. Hey, this is what we're doing. This is what it says. So in times of security crises, yeah, you do need a bit more of a different communication style to make people feel at ease and to not feel as afraid.
I want you to talk to the geek inside you, the nerd you've been talking about, and let me test the nerd. I want you to be a futurist now. I'm giving you prompt. So you are the large language model sitting in front of me, and I'm prompting you. So you become the AI futurist or the futurist. And what happens in the fully rolled out, post rolling out AI across all sectors, which is education, legal, everywhere. AI has been rolled out and it is more mature as a technology now. And do you think in that scenario, when it's rolled out, whether it's politics, legal, defense, education,
healthcare,
health, everywhere, and what kind of conversations we are having at the top level of the leadership and at the middle management and at the front line?
Yeah. It's difficult for me to answer this without using someone else's ideas because I was listening to Abundance this morning by Ezra Klein and his co-author, someone else who I can't remember their name, but they paint a really beautiful AI future in that. And so ideally, I think AI augments our lives where it takes a lot of the extra workload, the extra strain off. The idea that they say is that because AI leverages the collective wisdom of humanity, it references the large language model of our stuff, we all share in the profits that AI generates, which I think is a very equal way to go about it. So when you have more time, when you have more capacity, when AI is taking off a lot of the grunt work, the donkey work, and hopefully AI can start doing my laundry and dishes as well. When we have more space, we can do more creative conversations. And so I would hope that the leadership I mean, in this dream scenario, leadership is actually at a global level, and there are more collaborative movements happening to harness the collective resources of the planet so that we can treat it as an entire ecosystem rather than squabbling over oil and shit that comes out of the ground, like why don't we actually harness our energy together and look out towards the stars, get a different energy source that is bigger and broader.
Elon Musk?
Well, no, I know, but it's
looking out at the stars and Mars.
Yeah, well, he doesn't own space exploration, okay? Yeah. Humans have always been looking at the stars and wondering more. They're awe-inspiring. Yes. But I think the conversation moves up a level, right? From a leadership perspective. It's less about me and your borders and war and trade into, okay, collectively, we've created this energetic problem in the planet where we're encapsulated in this ever-growing heat trap that's going to ruin our home. Mm-hmm. How do we solve that collectively? And at a local level, I hope that right now everyone's so overworked. Hey, you slide into the weekend and you basically spend the weekend either numbing or recovering to do the week again, right? It's this churn that everybody's on. So I'm hoping that when AI is fully integrated into our lives, we have a 3-day work week. People are taking holidays. They have time to just sit and stare at a flower, go sit in the field somewhere and interact with nature again without worry and stress and demands weighing everyone down. So I would hope that those conversations are far more exploratory, more connection. We have more time to invest in each other, really.
Mm-hmm. From investing in each other as in to go personal one-to-one relationships, whether you are the partner, your husband, wife, the phenomenon of binge watching, people, as you said, numbing over the weekend, two humans sitting together, watching back-to-back telly for next 10 or 15 hours, whatever. But they're together, but they're connecting, not looking at each other, but looking at the screen. And such a powerful time moment to be together, to be doing things, as you said, looking at flower or interacting. So that human connection, which is outwards, but how do you see that style of, it's still a communication or a conversation happening?
Yeah, what happened in that scene? How did you react to it? I think there is a time and a place for consuming TV together, right? And it's a shared experience. It's also relaxing. Heck, like I love watching TV sometimes and just turning off my brain and consuming, right? Like put stuff in, I don't want to think anymore. So I do get the time and place. But it's when like, if you're going to bed every single night and you and your partner are sitting in the bed, each on your own iPads, not even talking to each other, like that's you have a division in your relationship and it's your screen. You're not looking at each other in the eyes. You're not debriefing how your day was. You're not talking about meaningful issues that you care about. And so it's everything in balance. There's a common adage, creator or consumer. And I think if you're consuming too much, it actually shuts down your ability to create and connect, or you don't have the space or maybe the muscle to create. So yeah, binge watching has a time and a place. It is a form of connection, but is not the only kind of connection. And if you lean too far that way, it can feel harder to step back from that style of connection where you're just consuming together. And again, I put like binge watching, I call it all numbing, right? Drinking alcohol, smoking weed, reading your fantasy porns, the fantasy books that we've been hearing about more and more, watching TV, scrolling on TikTok for hours. These are all methods to numb because life feels really overwhelming. So I would encourage people to face their fears and numb less and instead reach for a healthier style of connection. Again, all that sort of junk food. What's the broccoli? Going for a walk calling a friend, trying a new recipe, reading a book. Like those are all the broccoli of connection rather than the junk food that we often reach for.
I want you to delve into a bit more high points and low points of you running the campaign for Mark McGowan. What was your observation in terms of, because you are moving from one geography to another geography and one style of political system to a different style of political system, to running campaigns, and how was that experience in terms of the high and the low points?
I love working in campaigns in different jurisdictions because it's like a chess game. And as a strategist, I love learning the different rules. So the different rules here in Australia is preference voting and compulsory voting, plus the scale of your electorates. So like, for example, a congressional district in the US is about 120,000, 150,000 voters. That's the same size as a federal seat.
Yeah.
And so the scale... And a congressional district is quite small. We still got senators, we got governors, we got bigger systems. So it all felt very small, but there was also different mechanisms. So I really enjoyed learning the strategy and playing with new ways to have those conversations. It was also interesting learning about the electorate. I sort of already touched on that, but the Australian voters are not apathetic, but you're very comfortable. I say are you a citizen? Do you vote?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you are. Then you, the collective you, including you, and including me now, because I got my citizenship. Sorry, that was a total digression. But Australian voters are largely very comfortable. You have a very prosperous life here, you know? You have very clean drinking water. The whole society is super clean. You have really clean air. You have really decent policies. You have good social security nets. The floor is lifted so no one falls too far. Australia is a very prosperous and comfortable place. So when you talk about, usually campaigns are built on agitation, what you want to see changed or different. Australia doesn't have too many ones that are like real burning issues. There are, of course, and cost of living is a crisis, housing is a crisis, and those have become more crises since I was working in campaigns in 2017. But yeah, the Australian electorate is harder to agitate into action, into activism, whereas the US, everyone wants to advocate, be an activist. They're far more vocal. On the low points of campaign, like all campaigns are hard. You know, you're working 12-hour days for 6 months. You're living on hot chips and Red Bull and cigarettes. Like, it's not great for the system on a lot of ways. It's very high intensity because in campaigns, and really with anything, the only resource you can't get more of is time. So every day is maximized with the time of how you can make the most of it. So that's probably the only low point is that those times are hard. Yeah.
If you have to do a comparative between running campaign in the US versus here in Australia, what are the parallels and what are the things different beyond the demographics and the apathy part, which you already touched about?
The parallels, and this is what drove me to do campaigning around the world, is the question, do people connect in the same way? Does this method work across borders? And the answer is yes, right? People love having conversations. When you talk about what they wish for or what matters to them, you can find common values, right? Like humans love to connect to each other, and you can turn that connection into action. So that is very consistent. Australia as well has a stronger sense of collectivism than the US, which is a bit more individualistic. You look at some of your systems like Medicare and HECS, like those are very collectivist systems compared to the more individualist mindset. So that's a different sort of core value in both of those cultures. From a campaigning perspective, the Australian campaign style where, you said the last 6 weeks is like the most intense bit. I kind of love that because it keeps it contained. You're campaigning before then, but then you're sprinting for only 6 weeks. In the US, you'll start on a campaign maybe 18 months, 12 months in advance, and you're basically doing persuasion voting, so going out, talking to voters, trying to flip their vote. But then the last 2 months is strictly get out the vote. Because we don't have compulsory voting, you have to remind people, are you registered to vote? Do you know where to vote? Do you have your ID ready to vote? Remember that election day is coming up. Remember that election day is coming up. It's on Saturday, or it's on Tuesday in the States, you know. Are you gonna go before or after work doing vote planning? So get out the vote is a massive part of the campaign strategy. There's entire people who specialize in get out the vote strategies because when you only have 50% voter turnout, every vote counts. I remember that first election with Barack and Al Franken. Al Franken, so Minnesota has about 7 million voters in that election. It came down to 180 votes. So when you're talking about get out the vote, every single person you talk to who gets to the polling place really counts. And you have that here in Australia sometimes too, where there's really close margins, but because it's compulsory, you sort of can more guess like, okay, 80% of the population is going to vote. Here's sort of where it's going to land. You have a bit more a sense of it.
In terms of your more recent work, working with your colleague on reconciliation and delivering acknowledgement to country or welcome to country, can you talk about what capacity and what was the work you have done? And if you can just put a bit more light on that side of the work.
Yeah. So Reese and we were friends, right? We met at a house party, like any good 20-year-olds, 20-ish. He used to have cornrows in, and I remember I went up to him and I was like, hey man, is that like a traditional Aboriginal hairstyle? And he's like, nah, you seen that show Vikings? So he's actually copying completely different culture in his hairstyle. So friendship, we started as friends. And then because we're both facilitators and trainers, I kept calling him and being like, hey man, I'm going to Kalgoorlie. Can I do an acknowledgement? How do I do an acknowledgement out there? Or I saw this other person do an acknowledgement like this. Can I say those words? Or, hey, how do I learn Noongar? Am I allowed to use Noongar? Like, I'm a white fella. Am I allowed to? So it started as this really organic conversation between friends. And then during the COVID pandemic, we brought it online and we started hosting these Zoom sessions. Very, very organic. Started $20 a ticket. Just come along and have this chat because we're having this conversation. Do you want to join us? And 5 years later, we've trained 30,000 people all across Australia and internationally as well. And those are predominantly through workshops, a 2-hour workshop called Acknowledge This. And it's a really beautiful, transformational experience, really, where people come in thinking that they're going to learn how to say the script and what's appropriate, what's okay, what's not okay. But the process that Reese runs and that I run as well with him was... instead, how do you find the words that you want to say? How do you create that space of connection? And how do you bring the authenticity into something which is quite scripted and tokenistic in a lot of contexts? So, that's what the work entailed.
And how's the easiest way to know in any setting, whether it's corporates or sports arenas or when people are doing acknowledgement in that work, how did you manage that it should not be tokenistic, it should be more authentic?
Well, how you know as a listener is asking.
Or how, as a delivery person, people who are delivering those, or people who are trying to see that it has to be authentic rather than tokenistic, because nobody wants to be tokenistic, and naturally, as a default, I don't think so. People are organizing welcome to country or acknowledgement to country because they want to be tokenistic. They might have the right reasons, but they might not know.
And it's a really complex one because the best way to do it is to come from your heart, right? Is to be honest and to come from that good intent. It's so funny. It's like let me just grab it. It's this paradox where, people want to do it. They want to be seen to be doing the right thing. But through the process of that, they get so in their heads, they get so afraid that they end up, let's just do the script because that's the safe zone. It's this paradox where there's the safe zone, which is what is okay. And they know that they can't get attacked if they do the scripted safe zone. But the more you do the scripted safe zone, the more boring it becomes, the more tokenistic it feels. So you actually, in order to do an authentic acknowledgement, you have to be courageous. You have to be willing to step outside the box and to say something that is unique to you or unique to the place where you are, to take a risk. And so many corporates, so many people are unwilling to take a risk. They're afraid of being pinned as the bad guy or, we're going to get canceled. We're actually if you say it with good intention, even if you say something that's a bit off, usually people will extend you some grace and meet you there in that good intention.
And from there on, you've seen things closely across, again, geographies and topics and difficult challenges. How does the idea of race and privilege comes together? individually they're distinct and they can be defined as distinct, but I think there's so much of overlaps between the idea of race and privilege. How do you see those conversations happening at workplace, politically, socially, with your friends and colleagues?
Oh man, it's a very precarious conversation, right? And especially because it's a very emotive conversation, no matter which side you're on. One of the messages Reese and I often talked about is that whether you're a black fellow, a white fellow, or a migrant, there's elements of guilt and shame in that conversation, regardless of your orientation. So it's sort of this, it's a very precarious and tricky conversation to navigate. That's a huge question, man.
Because the more people, if you don't talk about it, things are in their own boxes.
Yeah.
So hence things are segregated.
Yeah.
But if you talk more of it, at least I know where you sit and both parties knows where they sit and then they can work around it. But if nobody knows what they think and believe in, it's just still, and we can only hate each other. That's the only way out.
Yeah.
But if one knows, at least have a good reason to either like or dislike or say, okay, there can be a common ground, because I think at the core, both sides are humanistic. They value human rights at many levels. So the more you talk, the more you share where you're at, wherever you are at.
Definitely. Yeah, when you make the implicit explicit, it gives us all what they call in the book Crucial Conversations, a shared pool of knowledge. You know, if we're all voicing what we think, what our experiences are, our stories, our opinions, we then at least have a common understanding of what we can pull from and how we can, find that common ground or find the way forward. But people don't talk about these topics because of fear.
In your work and in your facilitation and workshops, what you've been doing across corporates and different settings, whether public service or political organizations, how do you see the conversations around the race and privilege on their own or together happens? You know, these are difficult conversations to have because people don't want to talk, or some settings is not pro talking about these things. But the more we talk about them, you know, the more we understand each other.
Yeah, there's sort of this is why diversity and inclusion programs, you know, they've been reduced in budget, reduced in staff worldwide. Some of that's motivated by Trump, but also some of it is, I have a bit of this is not a 100% true perspective, but diversity and inclusion programs seem to turn into party planning committees, not actually having these tough conversations, right? It became about, look, it's Pride Week, oh, it's Harmony Week, oh, it's Disability Awareness Week, but not actually sitting down and talking about like, hey, are you aware of your own biases? You know, how do you show up when people are different culturally than you? Are you aware of how you code switch or not? Like, you know, having some of those really tougher conversations. And I think one of the reasons why it doesn't happen at work is because when your workplace is investing in training or development, there's sort of a line of what is professional and what is personal, right? And obviously, the personal world impacts how you show up professionally, but I think there's a line where HR departments say, nope, we're only going to do so much of that conversation, and the rest is for you to do personally. But that's a real disadvantage because workplaces have such an opportunity to shape the mindsets and beliefs of their employees if they step into that space a bit more, into the more personal space, and having a more rigorous conversation about race and privilege and your role within the system. Because one thing I hear quite a lot is like, oh, well, I'm pale, male, stale, so, you know, I'm not part of that. And that's a really unfortunate meme that came about because a lot of our leaders are still white men, but if they feel that they're being excluded from the conversations about diversity, inclusion, race, and privilege, then nothing's going to change. And
when you and people are, so the word is inclusion. So the whole idea is to include the whole population, not to exclude a part of the population.
I was literally about to say, so Fuzzy Wande has a great quote where she says, you can't have inclusion with division.
Yeah.
Simply, it does not work. It's not in the words.
So if it's inclusion means all part of the population comes together rather than just focusing only on one part of the communities rather than the whole. Because as a whole, it has to be cohesive and together. Rather than, you know, as an individually, okay, that group is doing well, let's, you know, this is doing bad and let's work on this, whatever. But I think it's a whole collective conversation.
Yeah, because otherwise you have cases where the minority is educating the majority, or where the emotional load is on the people who are most oppressed, or in a different power dynamic. So it's.
But as an organization, one need to also see that who we are serving, what in human services sector, and if majority of your audience is people with disabilities, then I think the training around diversity should be towards that, how people become more understanding of the kind of disabilities, or what happens in their lives. It's more authentic to that organization rather than the other hats. Probably that should be the first focus. Then you go cover the other categories, but that should be the first focus, that people should be able to understand the complexity of visible disabilities and invisible disabilities and their prejudices on disabilities.
Oh, there's a quote that's been rattling around by people, is like, everyone will be disabled at some point in their life. Disability is a universal issue. So absolutely, I think that's, and you're right, when you're in a specific sector, going through that lens first makes a lot of sense. One of the not ironies, but people often try to put the identity isms in a hierarchy, like, oh, race is more rough, better than sex, than gender, than disability, than ageism, than ism. And they try to put it in a hierarchy of which is worse or which has most impact. But really, like, how you interact with the world, the identity that you are most judged by is what you are most visible as first. So like when I navigate the world, I am most visibly female, and that's how I am judged in how I navigate the world. My friend who's Black, she's like, I go to the coffee shop and I'm first judged as being Black, then as a woman. My friend Zainab, she wears a hijab, she's a Muslim woman. I remember asking her, I was like, hey Zainab, like I was testing this idea and I was like, you wear a hijab and you're a female, like which do you think you're most visibly judged by first? And she's like, oh Emma, they're both so entwined. I'm judged as both instantly. And so I think like the lens in which you look at the world and that the world interacts with you, there is no hierarchy because it's different for every single person. And this is sort of what intersectionality is about, recognizing that we all have a bunch of different isms that influence how we interact with the world and how the world interacts with us.
Then how do you define privilege then? In that scenario, because every individual will define probably in their own way privilege, or you can't have standards of people having or not having privilege.
Well, privilege is about power, right? And how power is gifted or given to you without any demonstration, like what is given effortlessly. So like I describe myself as like I have an intersection of dominant privileges, right? I am white, I am educated, even American accent is a form of privilege. So
is it in Australia?
It has, it does culturally. I mean, that's been on the decline certainly since now it's more like, oh, hey, Trump, oh, you know. But it especially in Perth has a bit of a, ooh, wise man from the East, come and tell us the innovative thing. So having the American accent is like the next level of that. They're like, oh my God, you're from America, ooh. So there is a shininess, there is a privilege to having that. So, and again, so working on the campaign in Trinidad and Tobago is fascinating because I was helping the Black Trinidadian Party against the Indo-Trinidadian Party. I was probably like one of 6 white people on the entire island was how it felt sometimes. But in that environment, the Indo-Trinidadians had more privilege because they had more power, they had more wealth. The Black Trinidadian Party did not have as much privilege, and so it was a bit of an underdog dynamic. So privilege is versatile too, depending on the context you're in. It's really about power and who's given power upon the first judgment. What do we first judge you as? And then you are given the privilege or that power based on that judgment.
And how do you gather privilege then?
Well, there's some privileges you can control and some you can't, right? I don't know. That's a good question. That's a new question. I'd say like education and class are things you can attain. But it is funny. I grew up really poor. Again, my mom was a painter. Like, you know, we ate a lot of rice and beans growing up. Like, not a rich lifestyle. Someone recently judged me as growing up rich. They projected that I came from wealthy background, and I'm like, yeah, I'm educated, I'm well spoken, but I know what it means to wear the same shoes for a year until like the holes are run through them, right? I know what it's like to have only one gift for Christmas. Like that's my childhood. And so even if you do change if you move up in privilege in a category, you still carry that with you, that memory. But the world is what judges you differently. So I don't know, can you change privilege? Certainly by acquiring things, but things like skin tone, things like gender, if you don't want to change it, those will always be inherent privileges that you have to navigate the world with. I mean, certainly, how do you orient to privilege and race, navigating the world?
For me, the privilege is fairly clear. What is going for me is, I was born in a large family, so that was privilege. That I was loved by many people.
Beautiful. Oh, what a way to measure privilege. I love that. Judging it by love or measuring it by love.
My parents being together all my life, and they're still together. So having both set of parents growing up, access to quality education, access to tuition and support if you need. And from year 6 onwards, to fail. So I took all the decisions from year 6 and 7 that, Dad, I want to do this sports. So, okay, let's do this. I want to get into this university or this college because there's a better coach, soccer coach there. Let's move there. And so I was supported to make decisions and fail, which happened very early. I was not told this is what you have to do. I was supported through that. So because of that, I was good in academics. Because of that, I found my own either tutors or the curriculum which I wanted to study, what next. So I was always taking decisions for myself from a young age. So being decisive was a privilege, but supported by family. Because you always know that you have a landing pad. Yeah, safety net. So today, if I fail, I have a landing pad. I have a family who will take care of me. Worst case scenario, but that's privilege for me. Oh, that's so beautiful. And I'm having a reflection now of I was addressing privilege from a very tokenistic, tick-boxy perspective almost of this ism, that ism, tick, tick, tick. Whereas you've come from such a viewing privilege from a human experience of having love and foundation and security and space to fail and still be loved, unconditional love. Oh, I love that definition of privilege. Thank you so much for expanding it for me. You're welcome. And the biggest, because you were born in the right family, and I have a heritage of multi-generations of working in our armed forces, and that curriculum and discipline and heritage and family comes to you, and then I'm the recipient of probably 5 generations of structure and structure and traditions.
And our genes remember.
Yeah. So. And you know that's your family, and you know what's coming through to you, and then you try to pass it on. That's what privilege for me is.
Yeah, I wonder. I come from a line of migrants who've moved many times in all the generations before mine. So I wonder if that disjointed, chaotic but adaptable sort of lifestyle that I had growing up is actually from a lineage of disruption rather than I assume where you grew up in India was the same place for.
Yeah, I was.
Are you the first migrant away? Yeah.
So I think all of the privileges I have, which is the family, love, to take decision for yourself, open to fail. Because you're deciding for yourself, small things don't bother you at all. Getting bullied for being different doesn't make any difference. You just because you know that if I have to do this, that's the cost of doing that. You keep on moving because you are changing and you are evolving. And what I thought of myself when I was 22 or 23 or 24, and what I see myself as today as 40-year-old man is very, it's evolution. So you're changing every time. So things have happened, but it doesn't bother me.
And it's so funny. It's like I have. Oh, okay, do you want to go really courageous?
Please do.
Okay, so. Okay, and extend me some grace as I muddy my way through this, because I was expecting a response about like, well, as a man who is brown, who wears a turban, this is how I navigate the world. I thought you were going to come through that lens. And I'm very humbled. And I'm actually finding myself a little jealous because I'm jealous of your privilege and the security, like the secure attachment style that enables you to feel so free. And I think I'm catching myself in my own bias. I thought you would have a story where you've had a rougher time. You've had more challenge with race and privilege navigating the world than I have as a white fellow with an American accent. But now I'm actually like, oh, dang, through your lens of privilege, I'm way underprivileged. Like I've had to go through so much therapy to feel comfortable in myself and feel safe to try things. So it's this interesting reflection point. How do you receive that?
I think that's typically people would assume in their head, majority of the audience would assume that, just because you are born in India, your education is bad, or just because, no, I think it's the function of the family around you, people supporting you. You might be born in all the money and no money if you have the right family around you who give you right values and strength and courage through supporting you, which you can because that strength and courage you will carry with you wherever you go.
Yeah. Wow. What an incredible. I hope to grow that kind of privilege for myself. And thank you for receiving that. And this is modeling how to have those kinds of difficult conversations and say, man, I had an assumption about you, and my assumption was way wrong. Thank you for explaining your perspective so I can change my own.
Yeah, but thank you for understanding where I come from, and then a bit more, or being open to change as well. Being open to say, oh no, that's different. From a point of view from you, as you have seen, has the definition of privilege been very similar across individuals? Is it very individualistic or it's very collective?
Depends who you ask. White fellas have their own orientation to privilege. Largely. Usually, if you mention the word privilege, white fellas will recoil and be like, I'm sorry, I know we're the bad guys. Oh, we'll make amends. I feel guilt based on my ancestors. Like that's generally a response I feel that I get from white fellas when talking about privilege. What that means, though, is that there is a very, there's often a less nuanced perspective of privilege because they're unwilling to look there. It's too hard. It feels discomfort. Across other cultures, actually, yeah, it's funny. A lot of Indian culture, people who are culturally Indian have a very one world, one love, really strong sense of community and a very love-first mindset when it comes to privilege. You see different conversations about privilege between black fellas in Australia, the Indigenous Australians versus black Americans, which is its own culture of privilege and race. So even being black in two different contexts means something different. It's not a homogenous definition. I can't remember exactly what you asked. I just sort of started talking, and then I realized, like, is this what we're talking about?
And then thereon, if you have to navigate, because we work now in very diverse group settings. And not everybody would want to talk about race and privilege all the time. We just want to get on, do the work and then get on with it. I'm here to work. Not everybody wants to bring their whole self to the work.
Totally.
The people who would want to keep those conversations to themselves, they don't want to tell who they are, but they want to be productive. They don't want to have those conversations. But when you push people into those kind of corners to force that conversation, which they don't want to, which they don't see themselves as, it's productive to work, because their only focus is work. Because I'm a truckie, I'm driving a truck from A to B. That's it. There is no need to talk about.
I'm a software engineer. I'm here to complete my tickets, man. Like some people don't want to have those conversations, and I think that's the balance for a workplace is if you force those conversations onto people, you will meet resistance. We've talked about the why. Sometimes you have to go all the way back to the why and start with the why it's important to have these conversations or why it's important to voice these things. That's where you can start to create that change. But not everyone's going to be bought in. And I don't think you should necessarily force them or make it mandatory because then you get a lot of resistance. And yet, what is the role? I guess the bigger question is, what is the role of the workplace in changing people's sense of inclusion, of making a more respectful and harmonious society? You know, like the workplace has a certain boundary, but then, you know, again, we've had a decline. Now it's rising again in religious institutions, which would kind of fill in the personal gap. But yeah, who's responsible for raising the ethics and inclusion of our society?
Because people have the freedoms to associate who they want to, and they will work in those groups. And organizations, which if they are private, they have a limitation why they exist. And if they exist to deliver an outcome, and if there is no need for having conversations on broader, you know, socialistic issues or community issues, they don't need to have. But yes, people have the choice to be part of, join advocacy groups, join political parties, join groups who are having those conversations or pushing those things. People can move around. They don't need to force. So I think it also, there's both sides to it. If it sits with the whole broad values and ethics of that organization, it should happen there. But if it doesn't sit there, you can't force that organization to have those conversations. But people can still do what they want to do in their private lives.
Correct, yeah.
So if somebody feels very strongly for a specific issue, they can run campaigns, do all of that stuff, rather than forcing their employer to say, no, we need to have this thing.
Yeah, true.
And then they have to go back to their objects, why they exist. And if that is not parallel.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, yeah, we're arguing both sides of the same thing, right? Like, I'll add another data point, because even if you sell widgets, right? You sell screwdrivers or something, you know, you just sell things. You still have people. You still have a scope of influence, right? You have an opportunity to influence those people you're working with. One of the cohorts I was really interested in last year was like people who work on machinery, like dock workers or people who work in mines, you know. They don't have a laptop. They've never logged into a Teams meeting. They don't care about that. But you still have a scope of influence as an employer to put up posters, maybe make a booklet, to still have conversations that can shift them and shift the conversations that they're having, shift the belief. So I think it's agnostic to whatever type of work you do, but it's whether you as the business choose to take that responsibility for shifting opinion. And
then, which means they have to go back to the board and say that, you know,
correct, yeah.
we are an organization who will not deliver profits, but we are also an advocacy group.
Yeah.
Is the board happy? Are we happy to rechange our values? Why we exist, our values have to be changed so that, okay, we not just people who will do that activity and produce profit and produce commerce, but we are also in a group which will do political activism.
Well, purpose, purpose in people.
So try to have that. If you want to do that, the board might say, okay, let's have another arm of the business which does that. So they might jump out into foundation model. But
then it's over here and it's not core business, right? I think you've totally nailed it. There's a growing shift in B corporations, donut economics, and encouragement for businesses in the corporate world to not be so shareholder and profit driven, and instead to be driven for people and purpose and the planet. There's a hyperfixation on profit that is actually quite new. I think it's I'm going to stuff up his name. It starts with a K, Keynesian, I think, economics, but it's only from like the 1980s that this profit-driven model of capitalism has been developed. And so it's relatively new. We can lessen our grasp on it. We don't need to have a business be solely working for profit, because that's what created the great wealth inequality that we're seeing now as well. So I wish that more businesses would reorient so that their boards and their executives were designing a business that delivered good outcomes for people, good outcomes for the planet, good outcomes for society. Oh, and we're going to make money along the way. Driving just for profits hurts all of us, but it helps those few. So I don't know. And it's, again, and how do you convince people to give up money? Impossible. I get it, but I wish.
That's the idea of individual, that you are, and again, every individual is independent the way they think, the way they operate, and they have their own freedoms to operate, to make choices, and then have repercussions. So when you make a choice to be only capitalistic or only socialistic, the choice is that you will. If you are purely socialistic, I will do create commerce only for people, or whatever I have, I'll give out. I will be philanthropic, and I will be left with nothing. Probably in the end, if that's the goal.
You still have to run a good business,
yes.
right? So that you can pay people and you have a business.
So which means that has to be somewhere center, not on the extreme ends. That purely profits or purely saying you have to take money from the big guy and give to the poor guy. The old Robin Hood model probably doesn't work for longer because somebody else's money, and that intentions of being an individual is more important because an individual authenticity will create innovation. It's individuals who will bring science and bring new products, not the collective. Collective might solve social and community-based problems. Probably.
Hopefully.
Probably innovation as well, yes.
Yeah. I just wish, there is an element of like, there's the few who are deciding for the many, and anyway.
That's the conspiracy land.
Yeah.
The conspiracy land.
It's too big an idea. Read Abundance by Ezra Klein and his co-author. It's an extraordinary book which unpacks a lot of the economic systems to move from a scarcity mindset into an abundance mindset at a system level.
In closing, if you not closing, but from a point in closing as well.
Yeah. I'm getting gassed. We've had a long yarn.
Where you are going with the work, with the conversations, where are you going, and how do you want to use the skills of communicating in the next part of your career?
Yeah, so this has been a really fun conversation. It's gone a lot of different ways, but conversations are a container to tackle any problem. We can't fix what we can't talk about. So in facing all of the uncertainty, in facing our interpersonal challenges, in facing the challenges facing our species, we have to be able to talk about it. And when we talk about it, that's when we're able to move forward and create a solution that's better for everyone. And I see a lot of people, particularly in scarcity, doubling down, pulling in, withholding their communication or withholding, whereas actually we need to have the opposite shape and open up and be open and honest and find that middle ground together. So I just wish everyone would have more conversations with more honesty and more openness.
And not be exclusionary.
Not be exclusionary, not be defensive, not be judgmental. Yeah, just receive it. You don't even have to like it, but you can still receive it,
Lovely. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. It's been a great chat.
Yes, thank you.